Does an 80s movie based off a board game still hold up? Let's find out. Hello everyone, I'm Kay Swope. In 1985, the movie Clue hit theaters, making $14.6 million at the United States box office on a $15 million budget. Ouch. After its lackluster box office run, it did become a cult classic that a lot of people still watch today. But does this film still hold up almost 40 years later? Well, ladies and gentlemen, stick around to the end of the video and we're going to discuss it. I do want to say, spoilers ahead, although this movie is like 40 years old, so if you haven't seen it by now, what are you doing? So, with my reviews, I like to take the good, so I talk about what's good about it, and then the bad section, and we talk about those things. So, diving right in, what is good about this movie? First things first, I like the 50s setting a lot, because the movie takes place in 1954, which I think is a very unique setting, but also helps with a lot of things. Mainly being, because it takes place in the 50s and it was a movie that came out 30 years after that in the 80s, I think that really helps it become timeless. Therefore, it's not dated. They're not making dated jokes and references. The jokes they're making don't have anything to do with certain pop culture things going on at the time, even in the 50s or the 80s. So that's kind of fun, and I think that helps it hold up. Another great thing about this movie, the plot wastes no time at all, and every single thing in the movie is done intentionally with some kind of purpose. Whether the purpose is just to make a joke and in the moment it's funny, or if it's telling the larger story in the end. It is a murder mystery, and so there's a lot of details that you have to pay attention for that you do not want to miss. Something else I really like about this movie too, the jokes seem to fly at a mile a minute, and I quite enjoy that. I think it's nice seeing that they don't waste any time with the dialogue, and so even if the dialogue might not be the most important thing, at least it's really funny and is building toward a better joke. And the humor in this too is also incredibly witty, and so you really want to be paying attention to what's happening and what's being said. Also, being a murder mystery, the Act 1 setup has to be very, very important and exciting and enticing. And this movie certainly does not fail that at all. The opening is fantastic. They set everybody up. You're given nuggets about their backstories, who they are, why they might have motive to murder somebody, and then it just keeps getting crazy and piling on from there. This movie really cranks it up, and as it goes on, things get more and more crazy and more exciting, so I quite enjoy that. Something else to note, this movie has a pretty great soundtrack, and the score is pretty good. The score is kind of minimal, though, because there isn't a whole lot of need for music in this movie, which just goes to show how the star-studded cast and the writing really kind of takes center stage in this film, because you don't really need the music to help build the scene and the attention and stuff, because the acting is just so great. And it's written in a way where I'm interested and I'm following, and I don't need the score to kind of pull me into things, pull me into the setting, because I'm already that invested, that there really doesn't need to be a very big score. But given that it is a movie that takes place in the 1950s, they do utilize the song Shaboom, which you guys probably know from the movie Cars. They utilize that song, and they utilize Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and those are, first of all, both fantastic songs, but also I think they really add to the movie. I really love when they use music in movies, especially when they use it in a way that feels fulfilling and makes sense for the scene that is used in. Something else about the movie that's pretty great, too, that I think a lot of people don't pay a whole lot of attention to, but the cinematography is fantastic. It really, like I said before, it adds to everything. So there will be scenes where the murderer, you just see their gloves, and then they like maybe pick up a weapon, and they might, kill someone with it, or turn off the power, or things like that. And it really helps add things, make things more mysterious, because for me, in all of these type of whodunit murder movies, I'm always thinking to myself as I'm watching it, I'm trying to solve it in my head. I'm sure a lot of people else probably do that too, a lot of other people. But for me, I think that just really adds and builds a little bit of suspense. It's not a very suspenseful movie because it is very funny, but the bit of suspense it has is also done very well, and that is due to the fact that the camera work is done beautifully, and there are some really, really nice shots in this film. Something I find really funny too is all of the Clue characters in the movie. For some reason, all the guys specifically, and again, this is not necessarily an objectively good thing, I just think it's hilarious, but they're all like really horny, except for Mr. Green, because as they established in the movie, he's gay. And I think that is just, I don't know. It's really funny, but it's also nice having just one character that's not, horny all the time. Now, the biggest thing, whenever you hear this movie talked about online or with friends, the thing that's going to come up most, the thing that's probably most iconic for this movie, is its multiple endings. Now, I think the multiple endings, they do a lot for this movie that really make it stand out and make it really, really good. Specifically, they show the first ending just as if it's the ending of the movie, and they're like, "But wait!" And there's like a text box that kind of comes up and kind of explains, "Yeah, this is how the movie could have ended, but here's another ending for you." And then they show the second ending, and then after that ending, they go, "But here's the real ending," and then they show you the canonized ending of the movie. And the canonized ending, I think, is perfect. So here's where the spoilers come in. In the canonized ending, they kill a total of 6 people throughout the movie. There's the first guy who kind of sets the plot in motion, who we know is blackmailing everybody, and then everybody kind of starts freaking out because all of the staff that he has, so he's got like a butler, he's got a cook, he's got a maid, they all have connections to the people that he's blackmailing. So every single person there has motive to kill at least one of the staff. And so what eventually happens is, in the canon ending, basically everyone but Mr. Green ends up killing one of the staff members working for Mr. Body, which is his name, which of course is a joke given that he is the guy who's going to die and set the whole plot in motion. So basically they are all killers except for Mr. Green. Now, what happens, though, is Wadsworth, who's the butler, who's Tim Curry's character, which Tim Curry, he's amazing in everything I've seen him in, so love the guy. He's the one who's seen at the end with the revolver, who's basically kind of holding everybody up, and he's got the whole plan. It's actually revealed that he is Mr. Body, and he is actually the one that was blackmailing everybody, which is a really nice twist. I do like that. I just rewatched the movie recently for my 3rd time, and even my 3rd time watching it, I'm still taking a lot out of it. So in the end, Mr. Body / Wadsworth, he's holding everybody up, and Mr. Green then whips out a gun of his own that he had on him this whole time and shoots him and basically kills him. Then it gets revealed that he is actually working with, I believe it's the FBI, if I'm not mistaken, who's investigating this whole thing. And so he was basically a plant for the FBI this whole time. So he ends up killing the bad guy. The FBI and the police, they all rush in, and they basically arrest everybody except for Mr. Green because, he's a good guy. And then at the end, he makes this hilarious joke because, as I mentioned before, the big joke throughout the movie is that his character is gay. And that's what he's getting blackmailed for, because I guess whatever position he's holding, especially in the 1950s, they would not approve of his lifestyle if they knew that he was gay. Anyways, so essentially at the end, they're arresting everybody, and the last joke of the whole movie, before it completely ends, it goes to credits, is he's talking to the one cop guy, and he's like, "Now, I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife." And I just think that is hilarious. So, again, great humor, great stuff. That's the good things I have to say about this movie, which I know is definitely a lot. Moving on to the bad things, I have 2 things specifically that I want to mention. First, this has to do exactly with the alternate endings. And it's not that I love the idea of the alternate endings. I love being able to see all of them, and I think the canonized one is clearly the best of those 3 endings. But the other 2 endings, they're not as satisfying, I think. So here's what they are. The first ending, the one that we see right in the film, the first ending, my big problem with it is essentially what happens is Yvette, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, she is the maid. She ends up killing Mr. Body and the cook, who are the first 2 dead people. And then Miss Scarlet basically kills everybody else and kills Yvette. So, and I think that one, it makes sense because they show how she's basically connected to everything, and she basically wants to sell out and rat everyone's secrets out and sell them out, essentially, everyone who's there, because they all work in government jobs and they all have government secrets that they all know, but they're also being blackmailed because of those very things. Well, I think it's interesting seeing her be the murderer because it kind of makes sense. The only problem is it's more fulfilling, I think, the canonized ending, because what happens is everyone's guilty of something. And one guy he still kills he still kills someone. Mr. Green still kills someone, but he does it in self-defense. And I mean, he's working with the authorities, So there's not really any problem with that I see, and I think it still makes for a very satisfying ending. This one, though, having just one person be the murderer, which is the same for the second ending too, which I'll get in a minute, having one person be the murderer, I think, is not quite as satisfying, and I don't think quite makes as much sense, to be quite honest, because they do a big plot point in this, and this is with the board game as well, but there are secret passages from rooms to other rooms, and they play a very big part in how they can explain how everybody gets killed. And I do think that kind of falls flat in the other two endings when they're trying to explain those things. There's also the point, too, that after they hear Yvette scream and they run there, and there's one person who's not there in the scene, and then they go into the kitchen, there's another person who's not there in the kitchen scene. And I don't think the other two endings are as coherent with that, if that makes sense, because not the same person is missing in both times, and that kind of makes things confusing, and I don't think it makes as much sense. Again, it goes really fast, and the way they explain it's kind of confusing, but it's definitely less satisfying. The second ending is my least favorite ending, which is the one where it's Miss Peacock who does everything. And for one, Miss Peacock is clearly like the oldest person there, and so it kind of throws me off because I'm like, how is she going to be able to do all this running around and all these murderers and everything like that? And I just don't think it makes logical sense just based upon who she is and who we know that she is established as. But the biggest reason I bring up these endings is because, in case you weren't aware, what they did is when this movie first came out in theaters, they sent different versions of the movie with different endings to different theaters. The idea being it would encourage people to go see it multiple times at different theaters so they can make more money on it. Well, the problem is I do not believe they publicized that or marketed that anywhere. So a lot of people were going to see the movie and they were only seeing one ending and just assuming that's how it went. Now, on the home releases of the movie, they edit all of the endings into it, and they pick one to be the canonized ending, which I believe is the best ending. And so my biggest problem, I guess, with the movie is not so much the state it's in today where we can see all the alternate endings. It's how it was when it first released, because I feel like I'd be very disappointed and have a whole new tone on the movie if I saw either of the first two endings as my canonized ending. And so I guess that's my biggest complaint of the movie, because if I were seeing it in the state it originally came out, I probably would not like it as near as much as I do right now. So, again, I have nothing but good things to say about this movie. The only thing holding it back is these endings and how that kind of played out when they first came out in theaters. It'd be different if they did some type of marketing to say, hey, we have different versions of this movie that are all going out. Or they left a stinger at the end. I don't know if they did this or not. I didn't hear anything about this. They left a stinger at the end of the movie kind of explaining, hey, there's two more endings out there. Go watch it in other theaters. Because if they were to do that, that would make the whole thing more unique and more fun, dare I say. But my issue is I don't think they did, and not all the endings are satisfying. Therefore, if I were to just see the first two endings, either one of those, I would probably not be very excited or satisfied with how any of it turned out. But all of that being said, bringing it all back in, wrapping things up, Clue is a phenomenal movie. There's never a dull moment. Quite frankly, I wish it did get more love when it came out, but I do think that it is held back a little bit by how the endings were. Another issue I might have with this movie is because things are moving so fast, it would be very easy to get confused with how fast the pacing is. And that being said as well, with the alternate endings, it can get very convoluted. And I can totally see how people would miss a lot that went on in the plot. Because like I said, this is my third time watching the movie. And I think this time it clicked better than any of the previous times. I still enjoyed watching it the other two times. But I can definitely say that I can see why some people might have issues with the film because of how fast it goes and how convoluted the three endings can make it. That being said, Clue is a phenomenal movie. There is not a dull moment in it because the plot moves so fast and the jokes come at you out of nowhere all the time, and it makes it a very entertaining thrill ride of a movie to watch. I do wish this movie got more love when it came out. However, I can totally see why it didn't, because the whole alternate ending thing could be very convoluted and confusing, and not every ending is very satisfying if you ask me. To answer our initial question that we asked at the start of this video, does Clue hold up? I would say, heck yeah, it does. I think Clue is a phenomenal movie, and if it weren't for a little bit of convoluted things and being unsatisfied with some of the endings, that would keep it from being a perfect movie in my mind. Therefore, if I'm going to rank this movie from 1 to 10, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10, which is phenomenal. So, that being said, thank you guys all for joining me for this retro review, if you will, of Clue. If you want to see more reviews that I have done, go and check out more on my channel. Feel free to subscribe if you liked this review. I'm trying to do more like them, so subscribe. If you have your own opinions on Clue, I'd love to hear them in the comments, so go hit me up down there. And if you like this video, go ahead and give that a thumbs up. But I'm K-Swope, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one. But until next time, remember, communism was just a red herring.